She climbed up on the trailer.
Oh, how good.
And then but the physio, the optional physio shoulder.
The other option is on the way back, you can go down this grass around. Really?
Australian wildlife day.
I don't know.
But that's tomorrow at the aquarium.
I think we're going to turn our lights off.
Okay, in the dark.
In the far north of Australia lies one of the oldest and most biodiverse rainforests in the world. Its mountain slopes boast 4,000 different types of plant, and its valleys are home to over 100 mammal species. The forest canopy here is a cacophony of noise, with more than 370 kinds of birds calling. While below them, 78 strange and unique species of fish swim through clear flowing streams, and ancient-looking reptiles move through the undergrowth.
Like everything in this incredible continent, it's uniquely Australian. We have more unique species to the wet tropics per square kilometre than any other part of Australia. We have 88 endemic species. Some of them are full species, some of them are just subspecies. But 88 unique animals to this part of the world. The plants and animals around us here have got really three origins. They've either come from connections to other continents, or they've evolved specifically in Australia and they're unique to Australia, or we've inherited them from Southeast Asia. So it's a wonderful, rich story about where all our plants and animals come from. We don't see ourselves as a rainforest continent. We see ourselves as the wide brown land, and famously poets and songwriters have described that in infinite detail. But I love to travel in time in my head and see a much greener landscape and understand that that's our cultural heritage. That was once Australia. The Wet Tropics has been a World Heritage Area since 1988. The International Union for the Conservation of Nature, the IUCN, looked at 173,000 protected areas worldwide, and they rated the Wet Tropics as the second most irreplaceable natural World Heritage Area and the sixth most irreplaceable landscape for threatened species on the planet.
Nestled in the rainforest, at the heart of the Wet Tropics, is the small town of Kuranda. Less than an hour's drive from Cairns, the town becomes a bustling tourist destination every day, as people day trip up to see the rainforest and visit the impressive Barren Falls waterfall. However, the most unique thing about Kuranda goes unnoticed by the masses.
In the early 2000s, I was up here doing my PhD on green-eyed tree frogs. So I was sampling through this region, and when I came through Kuranda, I heard the population of what I thought was green-eyed tree frogs at the time with a really distinct, high-pitched, fast call. I thought, oh, that's really interesting. That night when I was here, I then went over Myola Way and also heard the same call there. And I thought, gee, that was weird. Small little males, really different call. What's up with that?
What Conrad had found was in fact an entirely new species. He named it Latoria myola, Kuranda's very own tree frog.
Through my PhD then, through various lines of evidence, found that the population here in Kuranda, it's really distinct for the things that matter.
The species probably went undetected
just because they look so similar. The main difference is the call. So the green-eyed tree frogs, they have a softer, slower call. And the Kuranda tree frog has a fast tapping, more urgent, higher pitched call. Once I was cued in on the call, but then when I started looking at the animals, you could start to see morphology differences, particularly in body size for males. Speciation of the Kuranda tree frog was really rapid. We think it happened within thousands of years, which is probably one of the fastest documented speciation events known. We're sure species are forming really quickly all the time. It's kind of hard to catch it in the act.
One of the leading theories as to how this evolution occurred is linked to the evolution of the wet tropics itself. Less than 8,000 years ago, during the last glacial maxima, the Australian continent dried out, and the wet tropics rainforest split into a north and a south.
Creatures that were restricted to that rainforest and couldn't fly between them, like birds, they were isolated for really extended periods. And that's what generated these north-south lineages we see in many frogs and other low dispersal creatures. The Kuranda tree frog occurs from Kuranda, at the eastern end of its range, along the Barron River, out to about Flaggy Creek, out on the western side. I think it's about 7 kilometres long or so. Really, really small distribution, split across about 13 little populations on each of those streams coming into the Barron River. During one of those dry periods when rainforest was isolated to the south and the north of here, there was a ribbon of rainforest that persisted along the Barron.
In this ribbon of rainforest, a small population of southern green-eyed tree frogs might have survived, unable to breed with their counterparts to the north or the south, taking their own evolutionary trajectory.
Other species we see are also restricted to that area, such as the Myola palm.
With such a small distribution, Conrad knew the Kuranda tree frog was already at risk of extinction. Then, a chance meeting changed everything.
I was coming up here and giving public talks just to try get people really excited and interested in this cool frog that, lives on their doorstep, and to raise some concern about the potential impacts on the species. At one of those talks, Kathy Retta introduced herself from EnviroCare.
One of our members of our executive was actually working with the Department of Environment, and he brought Conrad Hoskin to talk about the Kuranda tree frog. Up until then we had no knowledge of the frog being in our area. The minute he said that there was this frog here and it was going to depend very much on what human beings did in this area, we thought, well, this is what we should be focusing on. My name's Kathy Retta. As soon as I came to Kuranda to live, I got involved with Kuranda EnviroCare because I'd always wanted to work in a nursery, and I thought that I also wanted to give something back to the environment. Conrad and I had thought that it would be great to get some monitoring in between the surveys that he was doing so that we could actually see what was actually happening at the individual creeks.
What number do you remember the number?
No, I just remember it's the fourth house on
Stony Creek?
It is 7 p.m, and a group of excited volunteers are gathering before a night out monitoring. It's warm, and rain earlier in the day means it is likely going to be a good night for hearing the frogs.
When we arrive, we record what we can see of the creek conditions, but no flow, the ambient temperature and humidity. And once we've got that, we turn our lights off, and then for 10 minutes we are in silence, listening for the frog calls.
Gabby is one of the longest attending volunteers.
I think it's really amazing because you really tune in. You just listen. You stand in the darkness and then your eyes adjust to the darkness. And if we're lucky, we see fireflies during the rainy season. And then sometimes the glowing fungi, it just looks like fairy lights in the forest. It's just so amazing. My favorite activity is going out for the frog monitoring, that's for sure. You see how healthy the environment is by listening to the frogs. And you know, when you hear the frogs, the water quality is okay, the environment is okay, otherwise you wouldn't see the frogs.
Thanks to the volunteers, scientists have fine-scale data from sites across nearly the entire range of the Kuranda treefrog. But it wasn't long before some worrying trends started to emerge.
Very quickly, over the 10 years or so that we've been monitoring, we've seen quite a decline in a couple of the creeks.
What we know is that the population as a whole declined after the droughts in the early 2000s to likely less than 1,000 breeding individuals. Some of the bigger populations like Jamram Creek and Warrior Creek have seen probably the largest declines. I'm Lorenzo, and I'm a PhD student at James Cook University. I first became involved into the conservation side of the Kuranda treefrog doing my bachelor when Conrad Hoskin asked me to help him analyze some genomic data for the species to try and understand the genetic health of this critical endangered species.
Lorenzo uses modern genetic tools to bring population-wide patterns into focus.
Out of these genetics, we get estimates of the number of breeding individuals, how closely related different individuals are, whether their parents were very closely related or not, so letting us know about inbreeding and their genetic diversity, which all relate to the overall fitness and ability to survive in the future.
The ultimate problem for Kuranda treefrogs is that their breeding sites are at the bottom of creeks. So you can have a small little breeding area, you can look after that really, really well, but everything that happens in the catchment of that stream ultimately flows down to that breeding site. Stream quality seems to have gone down a lot on some of these streams, particularly the bigger ones. A lot more humans now living in the Kuranda area, having just lots of little small impacts that end up in the stream, and we've noticed a decline in general stream quality in the bigger streams like Jamram Creek.
But it isn't just the scientists that noticed the streams around Kuranda were choking.
We've seen dramatic changes. We've seen decrease in a lot of fish life that we've depended on and seen regularly from 50 years ago to up until now. My name is Damien Hunter and I'm a Jabulga person, traditional owner of Kuranda and Jabulga area. My role is being the Jabulga Bullamba Rangers coordinator. I've been in this role for over 2 years now and I'm relishing and enjoying every moment, getting the chance to work on my own country and work with my own people. So we go down to a little stream and collect the water samples, and then we test the pH, test the temperature, test the turbidity in the water too as well, and these will give us all indications of how healthy the water is.
A major focus for Damien and his team are invasive species.
The Amazon frogbit that's been introduced, and also you got the hymenacne weed as well. clogs up the river system, and then it makes it harder for fishes to get around. This is important for our frog life, our frog species that live around in Kuranda, especially the endangered Kuranda treefrog. That's important to us guys, because that's our personal own frog and that, and yeah, we have to do our very best to help preserve that.
The rangers also work with EnviroCare for frog monitoring.
Having that Western science and Indigenous knowledge, I believe, can come as one and gel, and then that'll make it more stronger.
Damien and the rest of the Jabagai Boomba Rangers want their system of environmental management to set the standard in caring for country.
Our rainforest is very unique. We got unique plant species and we got unique animals too as well that you find nowhere else.
The other thing for the Kuranda tree frog is that they need rainforest not just on the streams where the males generally are, but they need it away from the streams too, because the females live a very different life to the males. Females spend a lot of the time away from the stream. They don't really want to be around the males. The males are a bit harassy. They want to be off in the forest. They're much more arboreal, and we think they spend a lot of time up in the canopy, and also a lot of time, maybe 100 meters or more away from the stream. So to retain a good population, you need a healthy stream, but you also need the surrounding rainforest. The Kuranda tree frog's been unlucky in that it found itself outside of the protected area we've placed through this area. In general, it's in private land, it's on Queensland rail land, it's on road land, all these kind of private users. So it's not a situation where you can just decide to do something and voila, it's done, like in a national park. Oh, let's do this and try our best to manage it. What you have to do is carefully work with many, many different landowners to achieve an overall outcome. The positive, though, is that there's a really active community group keen to see this frog do well and feel ownership and pride over this frog.
We're going to be planting at Owen Creek. When we have a big event, people get very excited. So very much a good feel for those activities. We get a real range of people, you know, we get some older people, but we're getting younger people coming along. People are loving to bring their kids. They want their kids to be more connected to the environment perhaps as they were when they grew up. It's an easy thing to do. Just being out in the environment and doing something physical, that's the most important thing.
These plants we have here, we've divided them into two groups. These species with a yellow tag are specifically selected so that they're going to grow in terrible conditions. We also have another group with blue tags, and that's our more generalist species. That gives us our biodiversity.
We grow these plants on for a year or more. As soon as we take them out of the pots, they're really ready to go in the ground. So the goal of the tree planting that we do is to extend and repair the habitat that has been cleared in the past and providing connectivity between the creeks. I'm not going to see the rainforest. The rainforest that we're trying to give a kickstart to, we're probably kickstarting it for 30, 40 years in advance of what it would do naturally. And so it's great to have the kids involved and to understand that this is something that is being done for them. They may not understand that right now, but they will as they grow up.
Just down the road from the planting site is an example of how effective revegetation can be.
So that picture is of the gully before there was any trees down the gully. I'm Michael, I've lived here for my whole life, second generation on this property. My parents purchased the property back in the 70s, I think it was 1976. The whole valley was an old cattle farm, so there were no trees bar a stand of kadagis for shading the cattle, and the whole rest of the valley was naked, just grass.
In the mid-90s, Michael and his neighbours began the arduous process of revegetating their properties.
So this one is a giant portwood tree. Got some palms in there as well. We've got black palms. We've got the foxtail to be up there. You know, I love wildlife. I'm keen on birds especially, and you know, watching the rainforest grow over my lifetime, I've seen a change in the wildlife that comes and goes, starting out with lots of little finches and things that live off grass, open country critters. Now we've got things like wampoo pigeons and even the buff-breasted paradise kingfisher, which comes all the way from New Guinea just to nest.
As a testament to his efforts, the creek that runs through Michael's property is now home to a thriving population of Kuranda tree frogs.
When we found out about that, you know, we thought it was pretty incredible, but it wasn't until everyone came around frog spotting that we actually got to see it, and then it really hit home. It's fantastic. You know, my daughter's 12 years old, she wants to be a zoologist, and having the frog here and seeing how it's studied is great for her potential in the future, you know. You know something's in your local area, but it's until you get in amongst it and you see it and you understand how special it is to have that in your own yard, and that's another great reason for revegetating and maintaining that environment for those special creatures.
Thanks to people like Michael, Kuranda tree frogs stand a real chance at repopulating areas after declines. Tonight, Lorenzo has been asked by a landowner to check a creek on their property for Latoria myola. If he finds them, it will be the first time they have been recorded in this section of creek.
We're looking for the Kuranda tree frog, a critically endangered species on private property of some landowner that would like to know whether that species is present, so they can ensure that their property is protected through the years for it. And I think we just heard a male calling, so I'm gonna go in there and see if I can find it and take a picture and a GPS record. Stop calling. We just heard one, maybe two myola males calling, but unfortunately we couldn't find them. But the first one especially that we heard from the road was 100% myola. It was very loud, it was very clear. So I'm pretty confident to consider this a record for them, but I'll definitely come back when I have more time and spend some time on this creek to get the male and maybe some genetic samples. I think we should care about the Kuranda tree frog because it's such a unique piece of the Australian natural history, with the recurring rainforest expansion and contraction leading to unique species like the Kuranda tree frog occurring in this area. It really offers us a window into the past. It's such a pretty animal. It's so beautiful. It would be a waste to have it go.
It's got a fantastic future, I think, although some of the populations aren't doing so well. It's just got a really good community of people keen to see this frog do well.
Only by having the local community care about the species can any conservation action have a chance.
The case of the Kuranda tree frog shows how a community, scientists, management, and passionate individuals can come together not only to save a species, but benefit an entire ecosystem.
Knowing that there's not many of them, it's just a great privilege to actually be able to see them.
I love it, not only myself, but my other ranger colleagues. They love going out and getting in amongst it and getting out on country and helping.
For me, personally, it's almost like a bit of an adventure, going out with other people and spotting things I didn't see on my own. It's really good fun.